That was the SAI.
Wow.
And we made, with the help of these cadets, we made honor unit with distinction.
That's great.
The highest the school can get.
That's great.
And our annual inspection.
Who was SAI at the beginning of the year?
A guy by the name of Davis.
And what happened?
Oh, he was a nut. He was a Captain Davis. That's this old Leffler brought in here.
Yeah.
And he was an out-and-out nut. And he always liked to take the cadets out in the mountains and use explosives and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
With high school kids?
Yeah, cadets here in school. And he kept after me to see where I could get him some dynamite.
Jeez.
So I knew where to get it. And a guy by the name of ran a hardware store downtown. Paul Bratton.
Oh, yeah.
Paul Bratton. I got the dynamite for him, a case of dynamite. But I told him, I said, now what you don't use, give back to me, and I will take it to Bratton and have him put it back in their magazine.
Right.
Right. Safe storage. He had the caps and everything else.
All together?
Yeah. Well, of course, he wouldn't listen to me, the stupid son of a bitch. He was a captain. An old Leffler brought in there.
Reserve captain?
He was.
Or real captain?
No, he was active Army, but he made active Army through graduation from ROTC in college. But he would not listen to me. And he took that damn dynamite and stored it under his bunk over in South Barracks.
Nice
man.
Nice specs.
I told him, I said, Captain, you'd better get rid of that damn dynamite.
That's right. It gets real hot out for a while.
Give it to me and let me turn it back in. Ooh. Finally, there was a big episode up here where some of these town kids was going to come up on the school grounds.
Yeah.
And he got out there in the asphalt with a damn shotgun. And told him, you cost that thing, I'll blow your head off. That was the last straw.
I was going to say that would do it.
We wrote to Greg Nunn was
Was Corps Commander.
Corps Commander.
Yeah.
And he wrote to Fort Bragg, 1st Region Headquarters.
Wow, great.
ROTC, and hell, they relieved him on the spot.
Yeah.
That Major come in here.
Tip your table or your chair up too.
Come in here 2 days later and called me in the office, and he said, in front of Davis, he said, you're relieved as of now. He said, Sergeant Gibson, you're the ranking NCO. You're the SAI for the rest of the year. That was it.
All right. That's good.
He was gone. Stupid bastard.
Yeah, well.
People like that are careless with explosives.
I went to Vietnam right from SMA.
You did?
Yeah, my draft number came up. I wound up in Da Nang.
You did?
Got my little blooper, my little M70 with me.
Dino, where is this table you're talking about?
All the way over there in the corner. It's the best I could do. You know what I mean? It's a jungle out there, so shit, they all came with their wives. You know?
Yeah. It must be amazing to sit here and see all these faces just coming at you. How many of these reunions have you been at?
I come to all of them.
Oh, good. Okay.
They invite me every year.
Too bad.
Whether you want to come or not, right?
Well, I come. They send me an invitation. And I send a little bit of money to them to help pay for my food.
Yeah.
Sergeant Gibson was telling us the guy at SMA after we left was keeping dynamite according to the school in his room. Case of dynamite.
That's only safe.
He had the detonator caps and everything.
All together?
In the same room.
Nice one.
Boom.
When you told me that story, I remembered I was in Da Nang one night. We had a rocket attack. They'd fired Katyushas into base. You know, can't aim them. They're just waking us up, giving us hassle us. And I had a truck. And the Air Force would run around in these armored cars and tell everybody to get off the road, so I'd pull over and went by. Well, I was pulled over one night, I saw an arc. I saw the arc of this Katyusha still coming. Goes in the pool on the Air Force side, and I'm watching. And this guy runs up the ladder, gets in the pool, fishes the rocket out. I watch him in the darkness run back into a barracks. And that it was the same sort of thing. I remember thinking, he's running with a dud into a place with 60, 70 people, and he's going to put it under his bunk, and tomorrow going to go, look what I got. And yeah, I'm looking.
A friend of mine was in Viet Nam, and he told me that they had a lieutenant that was a hot-headed guy, and the line was held up. They stopped, and they wanted to know why, and he was pissed off. He wanted to go up. And he said they were in the middle of nowhere, and there was this chair in the middle of this trail. So they stopped. And the guy comes up and says, "What the hell are you stopping for?" He said, "There's this chair here. I think it's booby trapping." Trap. What the guy kicks it over. Right?
Boom.
Yeah, it didn't go off right away. They said they hugged the ground.
Yeah.
And they were right there too. It was a 105 round. It had the fuse taken out with a grenade igniter stuck in it with a pulp thing on it with fishing line.
I thought the Vietnamese were amazing. They were so good on every level. They thought it out, and we were coming in with B-52s and A3s, and we just felt like we could kill anybody. But the Viet Cong were on the ground, living
Under the ground and everything else.
Yeah, I still remember my first memory of you. It was that year. I went in the North Barracks. It was in the middle of the day. North Barracks crapper on the right side, and you know how the crappers were on each side, and you were just getting up from the one in the far end, and I walk around and there with your eyebrows, and it was just, I didn't know what to do. And you looked at me and you said, "Just keeping it warm for you, Wellman," and walked past me. I was frozen with fear. It was great.
You didn't have to be that way.
Oh, well, I mean, as a rat, it was fun. It was great fun.
Well, good. Glad you did.
Yeah.
I got to get off my feet. That's all.
Okay. You know where you're sitting?
Calling his mother.
Right, because he couldn't get to the door now because it was hot, shit like that. He had a turquoise and white Nash Metropolitan convertible.
That's
I
right.
got blamed for putting sugar in his gas tank. No. Damn it, if I would have been more proud of it. But I mean, I didn't do it, damn it. That's what... No, I wish I would...
What?
Yeah. I wish I would have been that proud.
Right. Remember Ripley? What company were you in?
I was E-Company. Always. 66 to 70, I was always in E-Company.
So you were always in Cable?
Second and third floor.
Yeah. I was up there with the guard last night. He was letting people into the rooms.
Oh, really?
He's a really nice guy.
I looked at my room. It now has like a door that leads out to the deck that's over.
I saw that door. That's where your room was? I saw that today, yeah.
Jerry Carnes.
Carnes dead now, yeah.
Kevin Dwyer. You remember Kevin Dwyer? I had this. Remember Dwyer?
Yeah. I didn't know him well, but
I remember Dwyer. Dwyer fell asleep in front of a sun lamp to go home. Remember that? Remember his face turned purple? It looked like Mars with all the cracks in it and stuff like that. Dwyer fell asleep. All right, his nickname was Dum Dum. Right, now I'm gonna tell. This is my right hand to God. This is the true story. This was a huge room. This was a 4-man room with 3 guys. Right, so Carnes had the top bunk, I had the bottom bunk, and Dwyer had the section of the field. But Carnes couldn't sleep because Dwyer's clock was clicking. Oh shit. So he gets up and he takes it and he slings it across the room. But he was a little low on his pitch and ricocheted off Dwyer's head before it hit the ball. Right, so Dwyer's pissed. He gets up and takes Carnes' aluminum baseball bat to his clock radio and goes, "Fuck you, Jerry, fuck you very much," and smashes the radio. Right? Now, wait a minute. This cost my parents $175 for that room that night. You remember when we flooded the hallway with the things underneath the things? Flooded the fucking second floor. Right? It's one thing for the first floor, but we flooded the second floor. Just for the sport of it. We had torn that place up that night. The room got knocked. Carnes got livid, started throwing shit around. It was a horrible night.
What happened as far as the school? like B Squad and all that kind of
I
role.
got like 100 hours or something. And
Just 100.
Carnes got like 100. Dwyer got out. We all got.
Didn't matter with Jerry,
The
though.
water was cascading down the back steps.
Yeah.
We had put towels around the radiator pipes so the water can't go down. The court bulletin boards that used to have the pictures of your family and friends, they were like circling down the hallway. Carnes ricochets off the wall. They had to take him to like the goddamn infirmary. It was like.
I didn't bring you your soda water, didn't I?
Yeah, no.
I got water. I found these. Yeah, get back to you.
Wasn't who I thought it was, but they all remember him.
Isn't that crazy?
The one guy came up, he says, I don't think you remember this, and I says, my first year here, you promoted me. And it was a football player we had, was a troublemaker. He got in a fight with him. And the football player, because he got beat up by this guy, as small as he was, he quit school and left. He said, I called him in and promoted him, told him that's the best thing he could have done for SMA.
You're a corporal now. Yeah.
I'd like to take this opportunity to personally welcome all of my friends and amigos here tonight. It's nice to see you all. This is probably the highlight of the weekend to most of us. We have our banquet tonight. We have two absolutely outstanding speakers, Bob Spears from the class of 1948 and Robert Bob Weiss, the man, the myth, the legend, the world-famous government teacher, will also be speaking this evening. Gentlemen, there will be no government quiz tomorrow, so you can relax tonight and kind of enjoy yourselves a little bit. One of the things, I have a little surprise for you this evening. We have a first captain here from the class of 1972 who's going to start things off tonight. He's an opera singer, and he's going to come up and sing our national anthem. So if you all would please rise for the national anthem. Please welcome former first captain David Marshall.
Sort of.
Thank you very much. I'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce the members of the Board of Directors to you. For 1994, they were elected this afternoon. Butch Aaron, the new president, or actually the returning president for his second term, is back on the board. An absolutely outstanding job. Vice President from Annapolis, Maryland, in the class of 1962, Jim Moss. The Secretary of the Alumni Association from Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, in the class of 1968, Dominic Jack Dalbo. Our treasurer from the class of 1962 will be celebrating his birthday this Tuesday. And Tom, we'd like to wish you a very happy birthday on behalf of the alumni here tonight. Please welcome Tom Davis from Staunton, Virginia. On the board, but not being able to be here tonight, he's a ship captain. He's out at sea, is Bill Abernathy from the class of 1968. Tony Breslin from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the class of 1971. Fred Berner from Hagerstown, Maryland, from the class of 1968. Fred Berner. A man that needs no introduction, world-famous auctioneer from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Phil Farber is on the board again. Back tonight celebrating his 60th class reunion from the class of 1934, Stony Brook, Long Island, Old Buckethead, Manly Hubs. Stand up, Manly, so everybody can see you. We're just Manly Hubs. One of our financial whiz guys from Miami Beach, Florida, Larry Marks. Larry Marks is on the board. The great country north of us in Canada, from Toronto, please welcome Duncan McFadden back for another term on the board. My name is Jay Nedry, and if I keep doing this, they'll finally let me get off Beat Squad, and I'm from Springfield, Virginia. From Staunton, Virginia, thank you. From Staunton, Virginia, Henry Olin from the class of 1963. Went to school here for 11 years and never graduated, from Waynesboro, Virginia, Bill Penny. Stan Schwartz is on the board once again. Stan, would you stand up, please, sir? A lot of people thought that Indiana, Pennsylvania was famous because Jimmy Stewart was from there. Not. Indiana, Pennsylvania is famous because our former president, Wally Stills, from the class of 1939. Jeff Zwicker is on the board. Is Jeff here this evening? No. Jeff Zwicker is on the board. From the great state of New Jersey, in the class of 1969, Frank Kotok is on the board. Frank, good to have you on board. Truly great athletes and great characters in American history, from Upper Sandusky, Ohio, in the class of 1949, Herc Wolf. From Vancouver in Canada, in the class of 1967, former class president, Company Commander Larry Atkinson is on the board. And new to the board from 1972 in Greensboro, North Carolina, is Pat Kelly. Pat Kelly, who assisted greatly with this. This is the 1994-1995 Board of Directors. I'm going to introduce one more group of people, and then we can start chowing down here. I would like, when we start eating, to have the alumni from the 20s go first, and then the guys from the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, and I'll call the classes out just so we can have the older alums be able to get in line first. Right now, I want to take this opportunity to introduce our first captains that were here. In the 116-year history of the school, we had 116 first captains. They were truly the best and the brightest, and it's a distinct privilege to have them here tonight. From the class of 1948, not only was he a first captain, he was quarterback of a VMSL championship football team, an attorney from Washington, D.C., Alan Jones. Next, from the class of 1956, he's an instructor at one of the finest colleges in the world, the United States Naval Academy. Please welcome Lee Lawrence from Annapolis, Maryland. 1966 from a little town called Dunn in North Carolina. Had a cadet at Staunton Military Academy from 1890 till the time the school closed in 1976. His first name is Everett. We all know him as Bubba. Please welcome Bubba Dolphemeyer from Dunn, North Carolina. Everett, where are you? Where are we going to see you, man? Where's Bubba? There he is in the back. Okay, from the class of 1972, the gentleman that just electrified us with the National Anthem, David Marshall from Gaithersburg, Maryland. And from the class of 1974, an outstanding gentleman from Richmond, Virginia, celebrating his 20th anniversary tonight, Tom Phillips from Richmond. Big round of applause for all our first captains. Okay, Dominic Galbo would like me to announce that we've gone well over $1,000 on the raffle, and we're going to close out the 50-50 raffle here in a very short while. So if you got any bucks that don't have a home, make sure you talk to Jack because he'll be happy to take them.
Excuse me, Jay.
Yes, sir.
Forgot one first cap.
Who's that?
The last.
Who?
The last one.
Oh, God, I'm sorry. Greg Nunn from the class of 1976, our last first cap. Greg, I apologize. Dementia sets in with old age. There's only so much I can do here. Right now we're going to have dinner. So I would like all the alumni from the classes of the 1920s. How many alums do we have here tonight from the 1920s? Phil Rieger, Max Goodlett, Andrew McCandless. Could you gentlemen stand up, please? Andrew McCandless and Phil Rieger from the class of 29 and Max Goodlett from the class of 1928. The 70th reunion for these gentlemen, the 71st. You guys can be first in line for chow, so take your wives and get on down there. From the 1930s, how many people do we have that graduated? Your whole table can go there, guys. Sergeant Denver, Ms. Gibson.
Well, not in here. Not in my third.
While they're going back and getting the food, I'd like to introduce you to the people at our head table. On your right is Lou Ann Burnett, Captain Burnett's wife. Next to him is her husband. We knew him as Captain Burnett, but most of us called him Judo. A very lovely lady used to live in the old superintendent's house in the junior school. Please welcome Patty Moon. This next guy I'm going to introduce is not only an instructor and a very valuable friend to all of us, he's the man that started the Staunton Military Academy Alumni Association. Please welcome the former superintendent of SMA and the National Military Academy, the one and only Crawford Moon. Next to him is a man who needs no introduction. Please welcome Colonel Bob Weiss from Staunton, Virginia. His lovely wife that fed him coffee so he could stay up and create those incredible tests. Please welcome Mary Alice Weiss. We lost a good friend of ours several years ago. He's obviously not going to be here tonight because he passed away. He was a dear friend to all of us, and representing him is his wife. Please welcome Betty Kable. This next guy is something else. He was the commandant that used to beat our ass. He was the headmaster that used to beat our ass. And he was also a cadet. He was an alumnus from the class of 1942. An absolutely outstanding gentleman, Colonel Edward Bebo Dodge. And also the swim coach. Thank you, Richard. Next to him, a true World War II hero, Sergeant Glenn Gibson from Staunton, Virginia. Gibby. Okay, if we can get the guys, where are the guys from the 1930s? How many people do we have here from the classes of the 1930s? They're all in the back. How about the 40s? How many people do we have here from the 40s, the swing era? It's your turn. Start going back there and get in line. like to have the people at the head table on that there also.
What time? What time? Where do you have to go back to?
Colonel, when and what did you instruct?
In military science. You were PM. I was an assistant BMS and combat assistant.
Yeah, when?
1964.
There were a couple of friends of mine that were down there then, Edlands, from the Eastern Shore, or no, from Southern Maryland. Bart and N.J. Edlands.
Just a second,
I don't know whether you
two
remember
very
that.
good friends of mine that are special guests here tonight that I'd like to introduce to you.
Settled up.
This gentleman is a guy that I've worked for 15 years. I'm in the nightclub business. My band has played all over the country. And this is a very tough business to be in. This guy's been my friend for 15 years. He's an absolutely outstanding human being, and one of the few people I can say is an honest nightclub owner. My dear friend from Charlottesville, Virginia, Mr. Jim Morris. Jim, could you stand up, please, sir? Jim is now working with our new governor, Governor George Allen, here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And one of the gentlemen in our state senate here who was very instrumental in helping the governor get his new policies passed, and a true friend of SMA, also from Charlottesville, Virginia. Would you please welcome Senator Ed Robb from Charlottesville, Virginia. We appreciate you guys taking time out of a very busy schedule to come down here and join us this evening. Thank you. In announcing the board members, I missed one guy, and that's Don Windley from the class of 1970. Where's Don Windley? Big Don. Thank you. Larry Atkinson has made his appearance. Larry, since you're on the board, would you raise your hand so we can say hello to you?
Wayne Britt, yeah.
What I say, boy, this kind of stuff. Explain Wayne Britton to
So what was the reason that he left in-country duty?
Who?
Logue.
Who?
He explained to your class, I guess, why he was kicked out of Viet Nam.
Oh yeah, Logue.
I never got it.
Said that there was, they contacted some North Viets or VC or whatever, or they were firing at him, and they said some U.S. guys made a big mistake and chased him because Logue shot this guy in the back of the heel with an M79 grenade launcher.
My favorite, the blooper, yeah.
Yeah, and
I picked up the bullwhip, and then the blooper was like, yeah, wait, see something moving.
Members of the classes in the 1950s marched on down. Particular item that we had that we've been looking for many, many years, and a gentleman, Bucky Day from the class of 1964, 54, has had this thing and has put it up for auction, and just to make you feel at home while you're eating, we have the old mess hall bell.
Clapping for the bell.
So what thank you, dear Lord, for this food and all our many blessings. Amen. Rest. I've got something that I've really looked forward to doing here for quite a while. Y'all know this is 1994. 50 years ago, this past June 6th, was probably the most momentous event of at least the 20th century, if not this entire millennium. Of course, I'm talking about the Normandy invasion. I have something here I would like to read to you all. Department of the Army, Office of the Secretary of the Army, Washington, D.C., July 29, 1994. To Master Sergeant Glenn E. Gibson, United States Army retired, Staunton Military Academy Alumni Association and Foundation, Woodrum Station, Staunton, Virginia. Dear Master Sergeant Gibson, on behalf of your friends and associates affiliated with the Staunton Military Academy Alumni Association and Foundation, it is my distinct pleasure to officially recognize your many accomplishments as a past faculty member and a 26-year veteran of the United States Army. Your patriotism and love of liberty marked your World War II service during the June 6, 1944 Normandy landing. Gibby was on an LCT carrying tanks, took a direct hit and all 20 guys were killed. The only survivor was Sergeant Gibson. You valiantly answered each call to duty, placing your life on the line to stand in harm's way. As a member of the Reserve Officer Training Corps Department at Staunton Military Academy from 1965 through 1975, you continue to demonstrate a tireless devotion to duty. Your influence on the Academy's young men during that 10-year period is remembered today. During this, the Association's annual reunion. On behalf of the United States Army, I commend you, Master Sergeant Gibson, for all your dedication and your service to our country. On behalf of all Americans, I salute you. Signed, Major General Charles W. McLean, Jr., Major General United States Army Chief of Public Affairs, and he wrote in his own handwriting, "Thank you, Sergeant Gibson, for your selfless service." And tonight what we're going to do is we have a very special award we're going to present. We're going to present the Major Thomas D. Howie Military Award for the first time. And here to present the award from Atlanta, Georgia, an alumna from the class of 1967, is the nephew of Major Howie, Thomas D. Howie II.
I'm going to be real brief. Jason's tough act to follow. He's real good at this, and I'm just an old country boy from South Carolina. But I am honored by the opportunity to be here as a representative of my family to honor Sergeant Gibson. My uncle, Major St. Logue, was a hero simply because of the fact that he was a leader of men. His heroism came from the fact that his men revered him so much. It is very fitting in that name that we honor Sergeant Gibson because I know personally from my year at Staunton Military Academy that he is also a leader of men. I listened to Jay talk about Sergeant Gibson's heroics in World War II. A few years ago, my wife Patty and myself had the great opportunity to go to Normandy and to stand on the cliffs over Omaha Beach. And if you haven't been there, if you have a chance, every American should be there. Every American should see that. I know most of you saw the programs on the television recently. It's a wide open beach. From a military standpoint, it's a wide open beach, anywhere from 200 to 400 flat beach, open fields of fire, leading up to cliffs of 30 to 60 feet in the air. Anybody who hit that beach was a hero. Anybody, any man in the military service in 1944 on June 6th who hit that beach was a hero. And it didn't matter if he had to be thrown off an LSP in the field position and dragged up the beach, he was a hero. For Sergeant Gibson to exhibit the bravery he did under those circumstances is courage beyond my comprehension. And every American owes our existence to people like Sergeant Gibson. I was at SMA in 1967. I was easy. I'm not a real cadet. I was a member of the F Troop. Sergeant Gibson was our tactical officer. He taught us a lot of things that year. I got to thinking on the way up here the things that he taught us. Many important things he taught me that I have used in life. He taught me how to shine my shoes, how to shine the inside of my belt buckle, and how to sound off like I had a pair. Taught us that words are concepts like duty and honor and responsibility and obligation and discipline weren't just abstract terms that you read in a dictionary. He taught us that these were real and actual things that had to be lived and embraced in order to attain manhood. And he taught us this mainly by example. Those of you who served under Sergeant Gibson know what his voice can do. When he gets down in that low octave, cuts those eyes at you, if it doesn't make the hair on your back of your neck stand up, then you're missing it. You're not listening. That wasn't the main things that the sergeant taught us. That wasn't his main avenue of teaching us, I should say. His main avenue of teaching us was by example. He set an example of those words. If you were ever there, and those of you who were, if you can imagine Sergeant Gibson standing on the hill at 6 a.m. at attention when the flag went up, his devotion to duty was as great at that time standing in front of a bunch of immature 17 and 18-year-olds who didn't know nothing as it was when he got off that LST on the beach at Normandy. He is and has always been a soldier, first, last, and always. He took a bunch of kids. What he accomplished with us that year is he took a bunch of kids who were uncontrollable, immature, and suffering from an athletic ego. And he taught us not to be controlled, not to be disciplined, but to discipline ourselves. So Sergeant Gibson, would you stand, sir? And sustain manhood. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you
Just to recount from the Sergeant's war record, 2 silver stars, 2 bronze stars, 3 purple hearts, and the French Cross de Guerre. Gibby, we love you. Would you like to come up here and say something, Sarge?
No.
Y'all can still hear him. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce the faculty members that are here. Ah, yes. The only man to have his own introduction when we walk into the big gym during basketball games. He's also the JV basketball coach. Scared us into learning Spanish. He's the principal here in Virginia, Mr. Keith Burnett, known as Judo. Former cadet, commandant, and headmaster, lived here in Staunton for a long time. I was fortunate enough to go to college with his son and daughter. An absolutely outstanding human being and a dear friend of mine, Colonel Edward Bebo Dodge. I'd like to introduce you to Sergeant Demery, one of our tactical officers for many, many years. Sarge, are you still here? Sergeant Demery? He left. Okay. This gentleman was assistant PMS, assistant commandant, and acting commandant from 1963 to 1964, Colonel Jack E. Fincham. Jack? Nice to see you, sir. This one sheet here is Sergeant Gibson's, and one other thing I'd like to tell you about Gibby. The last year we were open, he was our SAI. And he received the highest GI score ever accorded at a military school in the United States by the Inspector General of the United States Army. Just one other little thing I thought I'd tell you about Gibby. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Greg, could you stand up, please? This next gentleman was an English teacher, taught 10th grade English. He's now at Blue Ridge Community College. Daryl Hurst. Daryl? Skeeter Johnson could not be here tonight, but he sends his regrets and said to say hello to everybody and let his former students know that the squirt gun is still cocked and loaded. Tonight, representing the Kable family, her husband Fulton was our biology teacher, absolutely outstanding human being. Representing the Kable family tonight is Miss Betty Kable. Betty, could you stand, please? We have a gentleman that was a professor of military science and a senior Army instructor, 1962 to 1964, 1971 to 1974, Colonel Robert T. Richmond. Colonel Richmond. Yes. This next lady is one of my favorites. Her husband was our postmaster, and he passed away a couple years ago. He was my dear friend, and she is my dear friend. I'd like you to welcome Dot Thacker, who worked in the headmaster's office for many, many years. Dot, could you please stand with me? To get to Colonel Dodge, you had to go through this. Yes. though he doesn't need an introduction, I had to mention because he's here. Robert Weiss, Major Weiss, our excellent government teacher, and his lovely wife, Mary Alice. Bob Weiss. This gentleman here was a cadet, graduated in 1939. He was the football coach. He played football under Tom Howie. He coached Bob Spears, and his name is Eddie Flash Bryant from Culpeper, Virginia. Eddie? His record as head coach is 28-3, 3 BMSL championships. Okay. Celebrating their 70th class reunion tonight, from the class of 1929 are Andrew McCandless and Philip Rieger. Could you guys stand up? This is their 70th reunion. They've been friends. It'll be 75 years this September. Since 1925. Celebrating their 65th reunion. Their 60th, excuse me. 65th. The class of 1934, represented by Manley Hubs and the boys. We'll get the members of the class of 1934 to stand, please. Manley? Two gentlemen from 60 years ago, the class of 1939. I'm doing the best. I'm brain dead to begin with. I'm doing the best I can.
We know that.
Their 55th reunion. You only have to count as penalty to it. For their 55th reunion, the guys from the class of 1939. 1934, not 1939. 55 reunion. Where's Wally? Wally Stills. You're the only guy here from 1939? There's two of them. Eddie Bryant over here from 39. There's three of you here. From the class of 1944, here for their 50th reunion. What are the members of the class of 1944? Would you guys stand up, please? There's something I'd like to say. There's 5 of them here. And the members of the class of 1944, in our drive towards reestablishment, the class of 1944 tonight has just notified me that they have pledged $5,000, $1,000 apiece from the class of 1944. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. What a gift.
You have it on you.
Then from the class of 1942, Edward L. Dodge. Stand up, Bebo. Anybody else from 42 here? And in the class of 1944 is a guy that made all the name tags, he made the awards, he's worked extremely hard. Him and his wife have been so helpful. I'd like to have them specially recognized right now, and that's Jim and Elaine Kinderman. Could you all please stand? And we thank you so much for all your help over the years. Celebrating their 45th reunion tonight is Herc Wolf and the guys from the class of 1949. 1949. Where's the Herc? Stand up. We've got other guys here from 49, and there's Herc the only one. We got three. Lee, good to see you. From 1954, here for their 40th reunion. 1954. Can we get the guys from the class of 54 to stand, please? Here for their 35th reunion, the class of 1959. 1959. How many 59ers do we have? Richard Herschel and the boys. Here for their 30th reunion, the class of 1964. Where are them 64? We got to have somebody here from 64. Ah, we got 2 here. 25 long years ago, my class, the class of 69, was able to get the hell out of here, and I'd like to recognize my classmates tonight from the class of 1969 at their 25th reunion. Could you guys all please stand? And here for their 20th reunion, Tom Phillips the Bisset brothers and the boys from the class of 1974. What I'm going to do right now, we're going to bring our next speaker up here, and rather than bring him right up, I'm going to have him introduced by a gentleman that was his roommate, was also our first captain class of 1948. He was also the quarterback on an outstanding SMA football team. He's an attorney from Washington, D.C., an outstanding SMA alumnus. Please welcome Alan Jones.
Thank you, Jay. Yes, I was the first captain, but our top cadet was Bob Spears. I first met Bob at early football practice in 1945. We used to practice, as many of you know, what we call the salt mines down behind North Barracks. And we've been working out for 3 or 4 days, and Coach Bryant decided, hey, it's time to scrimmage. In any event, I was running second string right halfback. Bob was the star fullback and middle linebacker. I've got the ball, I'm headed toward the line of scrimmage, and all of a sudden, this powerful force meets me right at the scrimmage line. Bob hits me with a vicious tackle, knocks me back damn near into North Carolina. And I said to myself, wait a minute, this is no place to be. So I made a personal commitment to make the first team. Fortunately, 3 or 4 days later, that worked out, and Eddie promoted me, and we played together many years, and been teammates for about 49 years now. But Bob was just a tremendous athlete, and if you played with him in any sport, you immediately became yourself a better athlete. And that was because of his total commitment. You hear 150%, 1,000%. But in any event, at the top level, it's 100. That's what Bob did. And he insisted that maybe you couldn't make that, but you strive for it. And if you didn't, you heard from Bob. But that truly made us an outstanding team and able to satisfy our very rigorous coach, Eddie Bryant. We all love Bob dearly because he not only led us to great team victories in football, basketball, and track, but when the games were over, and happily we usually won, he led us at the parties. And we had some tremendous parties as Joe Butler, who's laughing over there, Bob Pickett, Burt Wolf, Jim Thompson, my other teammates and Bob will attest to. As a matter of fact, I guess there's some places in Virginia, North Carolina, Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, that'll never forget the Spears-led soirees that we had. They went well into the evening, were a heck of a lot of fun. Most of you know about Bob's football and basketball prowess. He was captain of both teams, All-State, if you will. And later, of course, you know, he captained Yale's football team for Herman Pickett, became an All-American. As his roommate, I recall several outstanding feats when he was involved in track meets. On one occasion, an invitation meet to Washington, D.C. Bob went to D.C. and competed against the best public high school and private school athletes in the area. Well, we weren't surprised when he won in the distance and shot put, especially events. You know, he picked up the gold in the 100-yard dash. I mean, this man was really incredible. Now, also, you can imagine, if you will, how our opposition felt playing against Bob. Here's a guy who, you know, could run like a tank, as strong as a bull, and he was also as fast as a deer. So, with his help, we won many a game. If I may just tell you about one. It's against Valley Forge. The score's 0-0. Just 4 minutes to go. We're playing here at Staunton. Muddy, crummy field day with the rain pouring down. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, how in the world can we possibly beat these guys? The ball's on the 11-yard line. Bob Pickett learned from the coach that anytime you're in trouble, make sure the play's got a 3 in it, because that was Spears' number. So he called a 39 around the left end. Butler and Thompson and Horvath, all the guys made their blocks. Bob cut that corner with 89 yards for a touchdown. He went 4-6-0. Now that didn't win the championship or anything, but I thought it was just typical. And I wanted to tell you about it, the kind of leadership we had with Bob. Following his successes at SMA and Yale, Bob became a success with steel business. Now that was no surprise to me because I was his joint venturer in our senior year. We had 2 or 3 little businesses going, and I hope I can tell you about it. Kind of fun. A concussion in the Harvard game in his senior year kept him from playing football professionally. And most of his long career was spent with Public Steel. Bob's had a wonderful life with his lovely wife, Carolyn. They're married 38 years. They have 4 fine children. And he's just an outstanding person. And I want to now present to you my dear friend, Staunton's greatest athlete, Bob Stewart.
Roommate, you're very nice to make those remarks. I appreciate that. I'm overwhelmed. When Jay asked me to make a few comments here several months ago, I said, what do you want me to talk about? He said, well, you can talk anything you want to talk about. I said, that really opens the door. But I think what I'd like to talk about is probably, if you were given the same opportunity, you want to talk about the same thing. That is, relate a few moments at SMA that might trigger some fond memories from all of us. I think that's after all why we're here in the first place. Unfortunately, I can only relate to my area, not yours. As we know, our own area is this area here. It's Staunton, we all know that. So you'll have to bear with me and hope that you can relate, to some of this. I think we can all remember when and why we came to SMA. For me, it was in the fall of 1945, right after World War II. Why of it all was my father was changing jobs, moving from Maryland to Texas, needing another school for me for the umpteenth time, and plus the fact I was offered a scholarship here at Staunton, and which was badly needed at that time. And I'll try to go on that a little bit later. And of course, for others, why your Army brats, broken homes, legacies, poor educational system at home, diplomatic children, and even incorrigibles. My wife thinks I still fit into that category. It was always very interesting to me that all these varied backgrounds, all the SMA cadets, what an impact I thought this diversification had on the overall makeup of the school. It had a very positive effect in making Staunton the exceptional school it was. As far as my background is concerned, my father was a fairly famous football coach. We lived on several college campuses all over the country, and I guess I was a water boy from the age I could carry the bucket. I was the only boy. I had 2 older sisters, and boy, did I like athletics! Wow, to me that was the most important thing in my life. And proof of that was when I had my first report card in the 9th grade in the public school system in Washington, D.C. with 2 F's on it. Well, my athletic career suddenly came to an abrupt end. And if any of you knew the renowned reputation of my father's persuasiveness. You can understand the difficult situation that I was in. And so until I could prove that my priorities had changed, my athletic career was over. Every night before I went to bed at 10 o'clock, I had to rehearse my lessons with my dad, and so forth and so on. Needless to say, after a few months, my study habits improved, and they changed. And that spring, at 14 years old, I practiced with the spring practice team at the University of Maryland. A lot of people thought I was kind of young to be doing that. I was horrified. They didn't know whether that was a penalty or a reward. But I was a pretty big boy at that age. I was about 175 pounds, 5'10", very well coordinated. And of course, back then, the team was made up of 4Fs and mainly 17-year-olds. I was sort of able to hold my own. Only to break my leg playing high school football the following fall at a local high school in Washington, D.C. The following fall, I entered SMA hoping that my leg had fully recovered, because later I found out, I didn't know at that time, that my scholarship was also based on the fact that I was an athlete. And my parents, I guess, chose not to tell me that. In other words, I was known at that time as a ringer. Now, I prefer to call it a student athlete. And there were several other ringers at SMA at that time. I didn't really know about that because I sort of found out about that while I was there. At that time, I think there were 6 of us. And it was just, you get 2 left or graduated, and you get 2 more. And all of us played at least 2 sports. And it wasn't as though we went out and, brought all these guys in from the coal mines of Pennsylvania. That wasn't it at all. But we were, but it was very interesting. And the times at that time was right after the war. And a lot of kids who left high school and had gone into the service, the war was over, they're coming back, and they had to go back to high school to get a degree, so they could enter colleges. So scholarships at the Virginia military school system were rampant. All kinds of athletic scholarships. In fact, there was hardly any age limitation at all. Not so much that it wasn't ever the case at Staunton, but at Fork Union, you could hardly recognize one player from one season to the next on their roster. In fact, a lot of colleges at that time would pay for scholarships for kids going to military schools in Virginia, as long as they agreed to come to their school, after that. So it was a very interesting area back at that time. And obviously the caliber of athletics in the Virginia school system at that time was really high. In football, as Eddie's record will indicate, 28-3. Our first year, I think we won 8, lost 1, and tied 1. We won the military state championship, and had a very excellent team. I can recall one of those victories against Bullis Prep of Washington, D.C., who we beat 7-6, and they were supposed to beat us very, very badly. And we knocked them off in a very well-earned victory. And what struck me was that the star of their team was an individual named Sal Pascuca, had played quarterback for my dad at the University of Maryland for 2 years. And this was his 4th year, and later, Bullis was a prep school for the National Army, and he ended up at West Point and played 4 years for them after that. He had been 28 years old, I think, when he got out of West Point. But that was an indication of what it was like. And our second year, we won 9 games and lost 1. And what really stands out, I guess, in my mind are kind of 2 things. Once we went down and played a high school in Wilson, North Carolina, by the name of Coon High School. Wilson, North Carolina. All these guys are smirking over there because they know what I'm going to talk about. And so we hopped on that old school bus with John, the bus driver, He stuttered all the time, and lovable old John. He was such an unforgettable character. And we had to take that damn school bus down. And I swear, if we played a game out in California, we'd still take that bus out to California. In fact, we had sleeping bags with us slept on that damn bus. Anyway, we went down to North Carolina, and this game was Friday night. Well, this was a big deal, wasn't it? A Friday night game under the lights, boy. So we went down there, got down there Thursday evening, and had a big steak dinner at the hotel, and walked leisurely along the city, came back to the hotel. And we're almost settled in bed, and there was this great commotion out in the hallway. Well, it appears there was an enterprising young group of ladies who were trying to entice our team into some activities that were obviously frowned upon. And as the negotiations were going on, we had several who were pretty good at that. It was precariously close to the time when the bet check was going to be made by coaches Bryant and Chubby Simmons. In fact, I was almost asleep at the time. The last thing I know, I had a glimpse of bodies flying all over the place, and out of the doors, down the highway, and down the hallway, and I'm sure a properly motivated was probably a few at this table over here could recite those details and I could. All I know was the next night at the football game, why some of these wayward young ladies were spotted in the stands, sitting dangerously close to some of the SMA parents, and pointing at some of the people around the football field. And obviously there was a few anxious moments there. That's probably we're losing at the halftime 7-6, but did come back to beat them. They were the defending North Carolina State champions. We beat them 32-6. The other great memory that I had, and here again I'm dealing with my era, was that we played, this was our second year there, we were playing Fort Union for the state championship. It was on Thanksgiving Day. And we were both undefeated in league play, and this whole game was one of the big games in high school, Virginia high school, for the whole of the year, like the game of the year. And probably the biggest crowd we ever played before. And there were college scouts all over the place, and they must have outweighed us 10 to 15 pounds per man. Here again, this team that was unrecognizable from the year before. I think they recruited most of their people from the coal mines of Pennsylvania. They were ringers. We were student athletes. And I said, we weren't scared. We weren't very intimidated. And I think we said to ourselves, and I tell you, our team, I never saw a team that gelled so much. I don't know what it was that we gelled that night. And I think we said to ourselves, well, if we're going to die, let's go down fighting. And we did, and we knocked them off by about 3 or 4 touchdowns. I'll never forget that game. That's a great feeling to win something like that. In basketball, I played 3 years on the basketball teams there. We had the finest consecutive basketball teams, I would have to say, in SMA's history. Somebody might argue with that, but I'm saying the 3 years in a row. The first year, we were 17-2. We thought we'd get an invitation to play at the Glen Falls Eastern States Tournament on the Glen Falls, New York, and we didn't. We beat the Virginia State basketball champions that year in the public system. But that year formed the nucleus of our second year in basketball, which was the greatest athletic team that I ever played on. I mean, it was, football, basketball, track, or whatever. That was the greatest team that I ever played on. We won something like a total of 25 games and lost 2. And one of our big games, I know, was that formed the nucleus. We had the 4 starters returning from the year before, plus Bill Wilhelm, who was a newcomer to the team, who later made the All-Eastern team up in Glens Falls. We had a fantastic basketball team. The first tournament we won after the season was over was in Washington, D.C. And to meet the outstanding teams in that area. And we just demolished them. It was one game after the other. And just prior to that, we had played Fort Belvoir, who was a team made up of ex-college players. And this game was played in the Armory of Waynesburg. And they had a very good team. They played with us. Let's sort of a warm-up game for them because they had this very ambitious schedule to play with our college teams. But we absolutely demolished them. I think the score at the half was like 40-15, and the coach accused Colonel Guy of going out and bringing a bunch of riggers from all over the country. As a matter of fact, he was so vehement about this, he almost took his team off the court. It's incredible that he couldn't believe that these were high school players that could play that kind of basketball. And we won this team in Washington, D.C. We won this tournament going, and that was our last game of the regular season. So I'll never forget that evening because we thought, well, as soon as the people were celebrating, so somebody got some beer and brought it back in the motel room. And, we had a few beers back, but not that many. A couple of beers, like, the case that they brought. And so, boy, the next morning came awfully fast. Brian trying to get us up, and they kind of suspected there was something going wrong. A few stomach ailments and some odors that came out of some of those rooms they didn't like. Didn't say a word, hopped in the bus. We took the cars in basketball, no bus. Drove back to Staunton, arrived there about noon. Colonel Guy said, well, we're going to have a basketball practice. He went down to the gymnasium, turned the temperature up to 80 degrees. And we worked on for 2 hours, and our season was really over at that time. He didn't say a word, and boy, I wanted to, were we suffering. Did we get the message? He didn't say a word, and he didn't a word before or after about the whole thing. Then about within a week later, we did get the invitation to play the Eastern States Tournament up in Glens Falls, New York. And this was quite an honor. They pick out, every year, they pick out the top 8 teams in the entire region, Maine down to Florida. It's really quite an honor to be invited. So we went up there, a lot of fans, sorry about that. The first game, they win by 1 point. Second game, we win by 1 point. And the finals, we lost to a tremendous team from Englewood, New Jersey, but no more than about 6, 7, 8 points. And thank God we won that first game because it was against the city champions of New York. And that meant that Bob Pickett and Joe Butler could go back and enjoy Christmas. Because they had both came to stand from St. Xavier High School and knew all their buddies back there. But that was a tremendous basketball team. I think the best team I ever played on overall. My last year, I was the only returning guy in the starting lineup in basketball. That's when Hertel came into his own.